Good Monday afternoon, everybody. My name is meteorologist Tim Pandajis here with your tropical update. And boy, do we have a lot going on in a hyperactive Atlantic basin. 2 hurricanes, 2 tropical storms, 1 tropical depression, 2 tropical waves. Today is September 14th, 2020. All right, here's a broad overview of what's going on out there in the basin. We've got Hurricane Sally, Hurricane Paulette, Tropical Storm Teddy, Tropical Storm Vicky, and the remnants, or what will soon be remnants, of Tropical Depression Rene, and then a wave coming off the coast of Africa, another very minor wave here in the Gulf of Mexico. All right, before we get into things, let's do our tropical trivia for this video. I want to know, what is the strongest Atlantic hurricane on record in terms of sustained wind speed? The answer to that question will be at the end of this video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and also that like button if you like what you see and you learned something throughout the video. All right, here's a look at those storm names that we've used up so far this season. Yeah, we have 1 left. Wilfred. What happens if we run out of names? What happens if we get Wilfred within the next couple days or before the season is out? We go over to the Greek alphabet. The only other time that has happened was back in 2005. That season, most active on record, 27 named storms. The first up on that list, Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, Zeta, Eta, Theta. Could we make it through all of these? Could we make it to some? Certainly a possibility, especially the way things have been going. All right, let's get right to it. A lot going on out there. Let's start with the most imminent threat to the United States for a landfalling hurricane. That's Sally. It has made the jump today from tropical storm. It was struggling all day yesterday with some persistent wind shear. It has overcome that, and you see this big bubbling blob of convection. It's an intensifying hurricane right now. High-end Category 1. Winds are at 90 miles per hour as of the 2 o'clock advisory. We look at the Saffir-Simpson scale. That's a high-end Category 2. It is expected to strengthen more. Category 1, I should say, high-end Category 1. It is expected to strengthen to a Category 2 upon landfall during the day tomorrow. Here's a look on visible satellite imagery. In fact, let's go back and show you the infrared, which is what we were looking at just earlier. Now, this tells us the temperature of the cloud tops. When you see wide-scale white shadings and even some bubbling of some pinks, those are cloud top temperatures that are anywhere from 70 to 80 degrees below 0 Celsius. Okay? Crazy cold cloud tops, meaning the thunderstorm activity is extremely intense and very large and encircling that center there. We aren't seeing a cleared out eye, though. That may be on the way, though, as we head through the next couple of hours as it continues to intensify. 90-mile-an-hour winds. Here's how it looks on visible satellite imagery. You can still see that there is still a little bit of some westerly wind shear here, evident by the you can see the low-level circulation here on the western side of the storm. Some westerly shear kind of displacing some of that convection, at least on off towards the east. But nonetheless, it is a strengthening storm, and it is a powerful storm already. Pulling up radar here out of Mobile, Alabama. You can see some of that banding, the northern eye wall here, still well offshore, and that's where you're going to find the strongest of the winds, the heaviest of the rain as well, with a track headed in this general direction here. The roughest side of a hurricane, the dirty side, what we call it, is going to be on the right side of that storm track based on its movement. Or the northeast quadrant, if it was moving due north and northeast side, front right quadrant, you're going to find the strongest winds, the strongest storm surge, persistent storm surge, and the heaviest of the rain as well on the eastern side or the right side of that storm track. Water temperatures are extremely favorable for more strengthening to occur, all right? And a lot of this water here, as you're getting closer to the coastline, is a little more shallow, but that warmth extends down a great depth. So that means that as upwelling occurs, the mixing up of the ocean water, it's going to just completely displace more warm water. It's not pulling up colder waters from the depths and, limiting itself. It's got plenty of warm water here to work with over the next 12 to 24 hours before it does make landfall. All right, let's take you through the track step by step. Here we are at present time. Winds 90 miles an hour, gusts to 115, a firm Category 1 hurricane. By later tonight, it is expected to make that jump up to a Category 2 hurricane by 8 p.m. with winds up to 100 miles per hour at that point in time. Category 2 still at tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., 105. So it's continuing to strengthen here. But as we go forward a little bit more, up to 8 p.m. Tuesday evening, still at 105, notice the distance traveled from 8 in the morning tomorrow to 8 in the evening. 12-hour span of time, it only moves about 50 miles. So the extreme slow movement of this storm means prolonged inundation from storm surge, persistent onshore winds, keeping that storm surge elevated for a longer period of time. The slow movement as well. Plenty of rainfall overspreading coastal areas there. We're talking over a foot in many areas. In fact, there could be as much as 2 feet of rain in some locations, especially on the eastern side of that storm track. So 105-mile-per-hour winds. It could certainly be a little bit stronger depending on its evolution from now until then. But once it moves inland, it's away from its fuel source, the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. So we start to weaken. We're down to a Category 1 hurricane now at 8 a.m. in the morning on Wednesday. Still not all that far inland. The movement's still slow. And then it picks up that forward speed a little bit more as it moves farther inland, gets pushed a little farther to the east, and weakens further down to a remnant low by the time we get to Friday morning at 8 a.m. Winds at that point well down to 25 miles per hour. So what are the winds looking like right now? Hurricane force winds, as of the latest update from the Hurricane Center, extend out about 20 miles on the northeastern side of the storm. So you see that little nudge there, the red shading, that is that hurricane force winds where you'll find 74-mile-an-hour winds or more. Now extending out about another 50 miles or so in the orange, you're finding winds up to 58 miles an hour. And tropical storm force winds, the largest wind field of the storm so far, extend out about 110 miles on that northeastern quadrant. So how does it look as we go forward here with that wind field? As it moves closer to land, we start to see the tropical storm force winds overspread areas like Mobile Bay over towards Biloxi and right up to New Orleans. And then you see the hurricane force winds do move inland near Biloxi, so seeing sustained of 75 miles per hour or greater by the time we get towards Tuesday afternoon. And then once it moves inland, that wind field starts to weaken a little bit and shrink in size. And then the wind field overall will go away as it moves farther inland. Of course, with an imminent storm about to make impact, we have all the watches that have been upgraded to warnings. The pink shadings here is all the hurricane warnings, the orange tropical storm force warnings there. And on top of that, we are seeing the storm surge going to be a big issue here with the strong winds onshore, the track of the storm, and its slow movement. Here's a good graphic that kind of illustrates what's going on here. We have the storm surge warnings in all the coastal spots, all through New Orleans, Biloxi, over towards Mobile Bay, and even up to Pensacola. So the track of this storm, you have to keep in mind how a storm moves. You have the counterclockwise flow around the center of circulation here. So Category 2 hurricane out there, we're seeing the winds coming in onshore, moving onshore here to the northwest. And then the storm itself starts to build. Once it turns northerly, it's shoving this water inland here, right? It's pushing it from the east off towards the northwest and northwest. Then it moves inland, and we start to see the winds wrap around, and that's going to start blowing the water back out. So we're going to see numerous wind shifts occur here over the duration of the storm, meaning storm surge affecting different areas at different times for a long period of time. And of course, as I mentioned, with the storm surge and then with the slow movement, a lot of rainfall. Look at some of these totals here. A lot of this is offshore, thankfully, but some of it right along coastal areas that could see 15 to 20 inches or 20 inches or more, approaching 2 feet of rainfall. All right, let's move on to the next one. Hurricane Paulette. This storm, powerful one right now, up to a Category 2 hurricane, 105-mile-an-hour winds, made landfall last night over Bermuda. Very, very rare. In fact, here it is at 4:50 a.m. on satellite imagery. There's Bermuda right in the center of Paulette. They could see the stars. Skies cleared out at this point. Clear skies, calm winds for a brief period of time, and then you get the wind shift in the back end of that eye wall, move on through. The bigger picture here on visible, yeah, it's made landfall. It's pulling away from Bermuda, but it's not done strengthening at all. In fact, it's expected to make it up to a major hurricane status, which is Category 3. And you can see here on satellite, it is still very healthy looking, despite being at such a higher latitude. Northern parts of the Atlantic tend to sort of get cooler, but not this time around. Almost all of the Atlantic has favorable ocean temperatures, even through this latitude. Even as you get a little bit farther north, still warm enough to support development and organization as well as strengthening. So this was a historic landfall in Bermuda last night. Only the 10th storm since 1851, since records have been kept, of a storm making landfall on the island. First landfall also since 2014. That year was pretty historic. Had two separate systems make landfall that season, Faye and Gonzalo. So very interesting there with Paulette. Where does it go from here? Well, strengthening continues, as I mentioned, up to a Category 3 storm with winds up to around 110 and eventually even 125 miles per hour by Tuesday. Heads into the North Atlantic. Look, still a Category 1 hurricane here as you're getting towards Greenland. And then it starts to take a turn to the south and does start to eventually weaken on out. That gives you the overall a look at the state of the Atlantic and the environmental conditions, no matter where you are, very conducive for tropical development, even being in the subtropics. What else do we got out there? Well, two other tropical storms, right? We have Teddy here that formed, 40-mile-per-hour winds, gusts up to 50, moving off towards the west at around 14. This is also expected to become a major hurricane here in the coming days. As we move forward, tropical storm and then strengthening quickly, Category 1, 2, and then 3. Thankfully, you see the track on this. For now, it does look like it will not be any threat to land, but certainly at this point in time becomes critical to watch if it continues west or if it takes that northerly turn and just stays out in the Atlantic, potentially even impacting Bermuda, although the forecast track now is for it to pass just east of there. And then last but not least, Tropical Storm Vicky. Now, even though this is not going to be very long-lived, it doesn't really even look all that organized right now because it's really not. 45-mile-an-hour winds expected to weaken into a tropical depression, then a remnant low. However, being the fact that we have a V name, Vicky, this is only the second occurrence that we've used a V name in a hurricane season. The last time that was with Vince, and that was back in 2005. Next up on the list, of course, is Wilfred. We'll see if we get there by the end of this week. All right, the answer to that question, strongest Atlantic hurricane in terms of sustained winds, Hurricane Allen, back in 1980, 190-mile-per-hour winds. Can you imagine facing that? That's the latest on today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit that like button if you liked it. And you can also find me on social media. If you have a question, don't be afraid to ask. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, or on Twitter. We'll see you back here tomorrow.